Hi everybody, Bob Stafford, Trainmaster Bob, and today we're going to discuss how I make deciduous trees using Rabbitbrush. Rabbitbrush grows in the western states and in semi-deserty type areas, arid areas with very alkaline soil, poor alkaline soil. And when I lived in Colorado, this Rabbitbrush was growing on both sides of the driveway going up the hill to my house. And every fall when I drive by it, I think that looks like trees. So once I got to the point where I started to do scenery in my model railroad, I went out to the driveway and started cutting some Rabbitbush. And the rest is history. I've been making Rabbitbush trees now in my layout since early 1990s. So let's continue on. I'll tell you how I do it. The things you need when you got to harvest Rabbitbush is a big plastic bag, and you're going to need digital cutters such as these. Now this is Rabbitbush my son Brandon picked for me Thanksgiving Day of 2022 in Pasco, Washington. I'll tell you a great story about this. He picked this in the morning after he'd been at the Pasco yard office to turn in his time slips in a computer, and he got this bush there by the yard, and he had it in his car, and he got pulled over for speeding on Interstate 90 going back towards Seattle. And when the state patrolman comes up to the car, he says, "What's that strange smell I can smell coming out of the car?" And my son Brandon says, "It's weeds." And the patrolman says, "Step out of the car, sir," and asks for permission to search the vehicle. Well, he searches the vehicle, he finds this bag where the smell was coming from, and he opens it up and says, "What is this?" And Brandon said he told him, "Weeds, just like I told you." And he says, "Well, what are these for?" And he says, "I don't know, ask my dad, they're for his model railroad." So he got his speeding ticket, and the patrolman thought he had somebody with weed pot, but it was just model railroad use. You know. So that's the story on how I acquired this batch. So it's October. This batch is now 11 months old. But what I do is this is what it looks like after you've harvested it. Yeah, so this is dry and more brittle than normal. Then if you use it up, no more you harvest. I already made 130 trees from this bag, and I haven't even made a big dent into the bag yet. The things you're going to need in order to start processing your Rabbitbush is a piece of extruded polystyrene insulation foam, the digital cutters, and something to make a hole in the foam with. This is a scriber tool I got, and all 10-penny nail, Phillips head screwdriver. They all work to be able to do that. Now the steps that we're going to take. We take our Rabbitbush, we just pull this up out of the black bag there. This is what it looks like comes out of the bag. Remember this stuff now is 11 months old, so it's pretty dried out. So I want to put some adhesive on it just to hold it in place. Now I'm going to be processing some trees here really quick, so I'm just going to use the hairspray, and I'm just going to put some hairspray on it just to stabilize them. and then put them into the hole. Just look at this. See the ones that look like a tree. Cut them off. Give yourself plenty of room to handle them, because you're going to trim this back later. That's going to be a nice looking tree right there. Now, if I was going to process this and not touch it for several weeks, months, instead of using hairspray, I would be using diluted matte medium, 50% matte medium, and 50% water, and spraying all these and putting them into the foam. It's a big sloppy mess when you do it, to be honest with you. So I don't have to do it. I don't do it. If I want to process a whole bunch of this for use later on, then that's how I would do it. So that's all we're going to do, is just keep going through this. Finding the good ones. Spraying them enough to stabilize them. And put them into a hole. And next we're going to continue on, where we're going to start putting our ground foam on these, and then ultimately our leaf material. I like to begin by cutting myself a bunch of 4-inch square blocks of 2-inch insulation foam, and then on top of these I have cut parchment paper, and I put the parchment paper over the blocks, and then I use some masking tape to hold the parchment paper down. And that gives me a nice base on which to work to build my trees. And by using the parchment paper as I'm putting the filler onto the trees, it does not stick to the foam. The steps I take in making a tree is, first I take brown florist tape with beeswax in it. It's very important to get the florist tape with the beeswax, because the beeswax acts as an adhesive. And I wrap the florist tape around the bottom of the rabbit bush. And the idea is to build up the diameter of a trunk. Play on the top here. Now we go build up the bottom. Okay. That should be good. Now there's two ways you can go about it. I'm going to show you both ways. I'll begin with this way first. One way is to just put on the beeswaxed florist tape, build your trunk up, make your tree, and paint this gray. And that's, for many installations, that looks just fine. If it's trees that are in the back and they're not right up front, and you don't need a lot of detail. Because once you put the paint on, the paint just covers up little ridges here, and they look just great, I think. Or you can put golden modeling compound paste taping up a tree like this, and it has all these bushes, so you can pull them in, just make a thicker trunk this way. So what I do with trees like this is I take my florist tape. Sometimes easier just to rip a piece off to begin with. I squeeze together all those stems. Begin to wrap the rabbit bush with my florist tape. That gives me a tree that's all nicely together, nice and thick. Also, it's building me up a thick trunk. I just wrap this trunk. And there we have it. Okay, now to make a more detailed tree, I use golden modeling paste. I have another modeling paste with pumice in it, gives it a coarse texture. The artist supply store didn't have any of that, they just had this, so this is good enough, I think. But if you're in a larger scale, maybe you might want to use the one with the coarse texture to it. Anyways, it's very, very simple. I've tried using the artist palette knife, but I found that just using a square coffee stir stick works, and it's simple. And all I'm doing is taking the paste, putting it on the coffee stick, and I'm starting to build it around the side of my tree trunk here. Okay. Just building it up. Taking it around, building it up, getting it thicker on the bottom. Filling in holes up here. Another hole there to fill in. So stuff is pulled down. Got a big hole right there that I need to fill in. Now, if you want some root structure or anything like that, you can do something like this. Just let some of this come out. Pull it out. And after it dries, take an X-Acto knife and we can carve on it. And to make it smaller, right there we need a little bit more. And just by pulling up and down, Use the edge of your stick if you want to get a little bit of texture into it. Not bad. So we're going to just have to let this sit overnight and dry. It does take a while for this to dry. Putting leaves on the trees is very, very simple, and it just requires a few basic things. I'm going to use our hairspray. Going to use Woodland Scenic's fine ground foam products. Here I'm using their blended turf. And the final step will be to apply leaves. When I first tried with the leaves on top of the foam, Hobby Shop had a Walter Seamaster leaves in 2 colors of green. I bought these in each color to try it out, and I like the look of the leaf texture over top of the foam. So once I knew that was going to work, then I decided to try using some leaves from Scenic Express. I ordered 2 colors of green from Scenic Express to try out. And I found out that the Scenic Express leaves are far superior to the Walters leaves in quality. They just look so much better. So it's very simple, and we're going to start now. We're going to take our tree. I found it works better to paint them after you've put the leaves on, just because you get spray and you get leaves down here and you gotta rub it off. But what we're going to do is go take our spray. We're going to spray it onto our tree. And then we're going to apply the ground foam. Now the ground foam fills in the tree, and then it requires less of the leaf material, which compared to ground foam is a lot more expensive. Normally try to start on the bottom first, and I flip it up and do the top. Now, depending upon your applications, some people, now this is a pretty good looking tree just as it is. So for some people this might be just fine to just use the ground foam on top of the rabbit bush. If you want to go beyond, the next step is spray this. And we're going to be applying the leaf. And let's see, in between I just need to clean out the tray here. Just back into the container. Now I can begin to apply the leaf material. This is the Scenic Express material. Again, I normally start on the bottom. Going to work my way up to the top. Okay, that's where we're at with this. Do another coat of spray. Just hold everything in place so to hold it back, they don't fall off. Anything that's, whoop. Okay, things like this fall off. Let them dry and they make nice bushes actually. Okay, here's where we're at. Now we got a pretty good looking tree. Going to paint our trunk. So I use dark gray and a light gray, whatever you got. Makes no difference. Like here I have a slate gray, dark. Here I've got a granite gray, which is a lot lighter. I just shake my colors up. Just put them into the little tray here. Palette tray, I think it's called. Okay, so I got a light and a dark. Got a brush. And all I gotta do is just basically dab some paint on. And I gotta dab some of the other paint on. Just dab around. Breaks the color up, it's not uniform. Okay, that just gives me a basic tree trunk. Dry. I painted it first with the granite gray, light gray. Now I'm coming back with deep taupe, which is a dark gray. I got some water over here. And I just am taking nice and wet and just putting a washer on here. Let those colors flow. Let's see where we help. Up here we need to put some. There we go. I'll let that dry. And then after it dries, I'm going to come back and I'll put a black wash over top of this. Help to bring out some more. Next step that I like to take, which I think has a character, is to put a black wash over the tree trunks. And a lot of people use India ink. That's great. What I found is don't buy any ink at Walmart or Target or any of those places like that because it's blue. It's not black. Ask me how I know that. So you gotta buy a good quality India ink from an artist supply store or online to like Blix. And the good stuff is just this pure carbon black. What I've used, because it's easy for me to get here, because we have a leather shop, is leather dye. I've gotten a leather dye in some grays, tans, and a black. This is USMC black, United States Marine Corps black, a real dark black. And I take to this isopropyl alcohol. By using this palette here, just takes 3 squirts of this into the alcohol. Seems to be about the right mix. And when you're opening this dye up and you're handling it, put on latex gloves, because once it gets on your fingers, it doesn't want to come off. Ask me how I know that. Okay, so I just put 3 squirts of this in. I measure this out. Each squirt's about equal to a plastic teaspoon. So, and it's just a simple case of coming up, put some of this on there, let it run. And also don't try to blow dry this or anything to dry it quicker. Just let this run and naturally dry. So it soaks in all the crevices. Just nice and wet and soupy. And we'll do the same thing over here with one of the trees that we've got the okay, modeling paste on this tree. There we go. My final step of making trees is to seal the tree. Now I use matte medium, golden matte medium. Liquitex makes one also. Or you could use a Hobby Mod Podge from the department store. This is just better quality. And don't use white glue, and I'll tell you why. Because white glue sometimes will give you a shine, even though it says it's not supposed to. It's supposed to dry clear, yeah. And also sometimes it'll leave white spots. Ask me how I know that. So use a good quality matte medium. Stay away from Elmer's glue. I take the matte medium and I thin it 50-50 to matte medium in water and thin it out. Make sure you shake a little bit before I use it. I have a very vivid memory of being on a layout tour. One very nice layout had a very narrow aisle that you must pass through to get from one side of the room to the other. It was only about 18 inches wide. I still remember sucking in my big gut and dragging my belly down the fascia, being thankful that it was smooth with no protrusions. That day I realized I needed to do something to lose the gut to better fit into confined layout spaces. My wife Linda had been after me for a long time to lose the gut. I figured it was time to give in to her and follow her advice and do something about it. She started me on a product that only required me to take 3 capsules twice a day before the 2 biggest meals of the day. These were breakfast and dinner. I also needed to clean up my diet a bit by getting rid of junk food and avoiding sugar as much as I could. This actually was simple to do. If it required a lot of effort to follow a diet, I would have never been successful at it. Over a year's period, I went from my 42-inch waist to a 38-inch waist and lost nearly 30 pounds. I can now go on a layout tour and not have to drag my belly down the fascia of a narrow aisleway. The product she has me taken is Zenith by Awaken. With just a little effort on my part, I lost my big belly and have to admit that I feel much better. Linda and I work together as distributors for this product and use the proceeds to support our hobbies, including my model railroad, since we are both retired and on a fixed income. If you need to lose that belly, please click on the link in the description. I am happy to answer any questions that you may have. I hope you found my video on making trees for my model railroad from Rabbitbrush to be useful. And if so, would you please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So this is Bob saying so long until next time. So remember, model railroading is the best hobby in the world. So let's get out there, let's run some trains, and let's build something. So long.